The notification sound from my laptop felt like a death knell. Another rejection email. This one from a startup that couldn't even afford decent office space. I closed my eyes and pressed my palms against them, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest that had become my constant companion over the past 3 months. Mackenzie Wilson, software engineer with 5 years of experience. I muttered to myself, reading the generic rejection for what felt like the 100th time. The words blurred together. We've decided to move forward with other candidates who better fit our current needs. My savings account balance stared back at me from another browser tab, $1,247. In San Francisco, that was maybe 2 weeks of survival if I ate nothing but ramen noodles and skipped my anxiety medication. The apartment felt suffocating. My sister Madison's latest Instagram post glowed on my phone screen, a professional headshot with the caption, "Excited to announce my promotion to Vice President at North Star Financial. Dreams do come true with hard work and dedication. #blessed, VP Life, #North Star Family." 237 likes in 4 hours. The comments were a parade of congratulations from our extended family, college friends, and professional network. So proud of you. Maddie, you deserve this and more. An inspiration to us all. I scrolled down to see if anyone had asked about me. Nothing. Not that I expected it. When had anyone ever asked about Mackenzie when Madison was in the spotlight? My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Dinner Sunday at 6. Madison has exciting news to share. Can you make it?" I stared at the message. Madison's exciting news had already been broadcast to half of LinkedIn, but of course, there would be a family dinner to celebrate. Another evening of sitting in my sister's shadow while our parents marveled at her achievements. The anxiety attack hit without warning. My breathing became shallow. My hands shook as I reached for the prescription bottle on my desk. Dr. Chen had warned me that unemployment stress could trigger episodes, but knowing the cause didn't make them any less terrifying. 15 minutes later, as my heart rate finally slowed, I caught my reflection in my laptop screen. 32 years old, living paycheck to paycheck when there were no paychecks coming, comparing myself to my perfect older sister. When had my life become such a cliché? My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. Mackenzie Wilson. The voice was gravelly, authoritative, with just a hint of warmth. "Yes, this is Mackenzie. This is Harold Warner. I got your name from Jennifer Costa at TechFlow Solutions. I understand you're currently available for consulting work." I scrambled to place the name, Jennifer Costa, dead. She'd been a project manager at one of my previous contracts. Harold Warner. Why did that sound familiar? "Yes, I am," I said, trying to sound confident rather than desperate. "Good. I have a situation that requires someone with your particular skill set. Can you meet me tomorrow morning at Cafe Luna on Market Street, say, 9 a.m.? Yes, of course. But could you tell me a bit more about the project?" There was a pause. "It's complicated. A tech company that's lost its way and needs someone who can see the forest for the trees. We'll discuss details in person." After he hung up, I Googled Harold Warner, former CTO of Datadyne, one of the biggest tech companies in Silicon Valley, retired 3 years ago after a 40-year career. If he was calling me personally, this wasn't just another contract gig. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Meanwhile, across the city, Madison Wilson was working late again. The North Star Financial Building's 32nd floor was nearly empty, but Madison's corner office blazed with light. Her new nameplate, Madison Wilson, Vice President, Strategic Acquisitions, caught the reflection of her monitor. The promotion was everything she'd worked for, but it came with a price. The acquisition team was under intense pressure to identify and close deals that would diversify North Star's portfolio. Traditional banking was evolving, and they needed to get into technology sectors or risk being left behind. Madison's phone buzzed with a text from their mother. "So proud of you, honey. Can't wait to celebrate Sunday." She smiled, but it felt forced. The family dinners had become performances where she played the role of the successful daughter. What they didn't know was that she'd been quietly paying their parents' medical bills for the past 2 years. Dad's heart surgery and Mom's ongoing treatments had devastated their retirement savings, but Madison had made them promise not to tell Mackenzie. Her younger sister had enough problems without worrying about money she couldn't contribute anyway. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Lawrence Fletcher, senior VP and her direct supervisor, entered without waiting for permission. "Madison, glad you're still here. I have a special assignment for you." She straightened, recognizing the tone that meant this was important. "What do you need?" Lawrence placed a folder on her desk. "There's a tech startup called Horizon Innovations. 6 months ago, they were bleeding money and headed for bankruptcy. Suddenly, they've turned around completely. We're talking about a 40% revenue increase in their last quarter." Madison opened the folder, scanning the financial projections. "That's impressive. Almost too good to be true." "Exactly. We need to know if this turnaround is sustainable or if they're cooking the books. If it's legitimate, they could be a perfect acquisition target. If not," he shrugged, "we need to know before our competitors do. You want me to do due diligence? I want you to find out everything. Who's running the company? What changed 6 months ago? Where the growth is really coming from. Use whatever resources you need. But I want a comprehensive report in 3 weeks." After Lawrence left, Madison stared at the Horizon Innovations logo on the folder cover, a stylized sunrise. Something about the timeline nagged at her. 6 months ago. That was around the time Mackenzie had mentioned taking on some consulting work, but Mackenzie never stuck with anything long enough to drive real change. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. Her sister couldn't possibly be connected to something this significant. Sunday dinner arrived with its usual choreography of forced cheerfulness. Their parents had prepared Mackenzie's favorite meal, Mom's lasagna with garlic bread, but the gesture felt hollow when the conversation inevitably centered on Madison's promotion. "A vice president, at 36, their father mused, raising his wine glass. "I knew you'd make us proud, Madison." Mackenzie pushed food around her plate, contributing minimal responses to the conversation. She looked tired. Madison noticed, thinner than usual, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "How's the job search going, honey?" their mother asked Mackenzie with the kind of careful tone reserved for discussing terminal illnesses. "It's ongoing," Mackenzie replied. "Actually, I have a consulting meeting tomorrow that sounds promising." "Consulting?" Their father's tone suggested he wasn't sure consulting qualified as real work. "Is that stable?" "Dad, lots of tech professionals consult," Madison found herself saying, surprising everyone, including herself. "The industry is moving toward project-based work." Mackenzie shot her a grateful look. "It's actually with a former CTO, so it could lead to something substantial." "Well, that's nice," their mother said with diminished enthusiasm before turning back to Madison. "Tell us more about your new responsibilities, dear." As Madison launched into a carefully edited version of her role, omitting the pressure, the late nights, and the moral ambiguity of some acquisition tactics, she watched Mackenzie retreat into herself. Her sister had always been the quiet one, but this was different. This was defeat. Walking to their cars after dinner, Madison caught up with Mackenzie in the driveway. "Are you okay? You seem—" "I'm fine," Mackenzie said quickly. "Just tired." "The consulting thing, is it something you're excited about?" Mackenzie paused, her hand on her car door. "I don't know yet, but it's different. The person who called me seems to think I can solve problems other people can't. You always were good at seeing things differently," Madison said, meaning it. For a moment, the sisters looked at each other without the usual undercurrent of competition. Then Mackenzie's expression shuddered. "I should go. Congratulations again on the promotion." You've earned it." As Mackenzie drove away, Madison stood in their parents' driveway, feeling the weight of secrets she carried. Her sister had no idea about the medical bills, the financial pressure, or the real reason Madison pushed herself so hard at work, and Mackenzie would never know how many times Madison had wanted to ask if she was really okay, if she needed help, if their childhood competition had damaged her more than anyone realized. Both sisters went home to their separate apartments, carrying separate burdens, neither knowing that their paths were about to converge in ways that would change everything. Café Luna was the kind of place where tech executives made deals over artisanal coffee and overpriced pastries. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a regular coffee I couldn't really afford, and tried to calm my nerves by reviewing what little I knew about Harold Warner. He was a legend in Silicon Valley, one of the architects of the modern data processing systems that powered half the internet. But he'd also been quietly involved in several startup turnarounds, usually staying behind the scenes while younger executives took the credit. At exactly 9 a.m., a man in his 60s approached my table, tall, silver-haired, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He moved with the confident ease of someone who'd spent decades making decisions that affected thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. "Mackenzie Harold Warner." His handshake was firm. "Thank you for meeting me on short notice." "Thank you for calling. I have to admit I'm curious about this opportunity." Harold sat down, studying me with an intensity that made me self-conscious. "Jennifer Costa spoke highly of your work at TechFlow. She said you have an unusual ability to see systemic problems that others miss. I try to look at the whole picture, not just the code. Exactly what I hoped to hear." He leaned forward. "Tell me, what do you know about Horizon Innovations? The name meant nothing to me. I'm not familiar with them." "Good. No preconceptions." Harold pulled out a tablet, showing me a clean, minimalist website. "They're a data processing startup, founded 3 years ago by a team of Stanford engineers. Brilliant technology, but they've been hemorrhaging money since launch." I scrolled through their product descriptions. The technology was impressive. A system that could process and analyze massive datasets in real time, with applications across industries. What's the problem? They built something amazing, but they have no idea who should buy it or why. They've been trying to sell enterprise solutions to Fortune 500 companies, but their sales cycles are 18 months, and their burn rate is unsustainable. How unsustainable? 6 months of runway left, maybe less. The board is considering liquidation. My heart sank. Another startup heading for the graveyard. And you want me to help me save them? Harold's eyes lit up with an intensity I hadn't expected. "I've been brought in as interim strategic advisor. The board gave me 3 months to either turn things around or recommend closure. That's not very long." "No, it's not. Which is why I need someone who can move fast and think differently. Someone who doesn't see obstacles, but possibilities." I stared at the tablet screen, my mind already racing. Their technology is solid, revolutionary. Actually, the problem is positioning. They're trying to sell a Ferrari to people who need a Honda. But if you repositioned it for mid-market companies, faster implementation, scalable pricings is, I was thinking out loud now, the gears turning. Harold smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. The question is, are you willing to bet 3 months of your career on a company that's probably going to fail?" The smart answer was no. The safe answer was no. But I'd been playing it safe my entire career. And where had it gotten me? What's the compensation? 3 months guaranteed at consultant rates that will cover your expenses, plus a significant buffer. If we turn things around, there could be equity and a permanent position. If we don't, he shrugged. "You'll have gotten paid to solve an interesting puzzle." I thought about my dwindling savings, my anxiety medication, the stack of rejection emails. Then I thought about the spark of excitement I felt looking at Horizon's technology. When do I start? Across town, Madison was diving deep into her investigation of Horizon Innovations. She'd pulled financial reports, SEC filings, and industry analyses. The numbers told a remarkable story of a company that had seemingly figured out the secret to instant profitability. Too remarkable. Perhaps. The timeline was what bothered her most. 6 months ago, Horizon had been posting quarterly losses that suggested imminent bankruptcy. Their burn rate was astronomical. Their customer acquisition cost was through the roof. And industry analysts had written them off as another overfunded Stanford startup with great technology and no business sense. Then, suddenly, everything changed. Their Q3 numbers showed a complete reversal. Revenue up 40%, customer acquisition costs down 60%, and a clear path to profitability. Either they'd discovered the holy grail of business strategy, or something else was going on. Madison pulled up LinkedIn profiles for Horizon's executive team. CEO Lisa Sandoval, a former Google product manager, CTO David Chen, one of the Stanford founders, CFO Michael Torres, who joined from a failed fintech startup, standard Silicon Valley resumes, nothing particularly impressive, certainly no one with the track record to engineer this kind of turnaround. But then she found something interesting. 6 months ago, Horizon had brought in an external strategic consultant. The consulting agreement was vague, mentioning only operational restructuring and market positioning analysis. Madison frowned. External consultants rarely drove this kind of fundamental change unless they were McKinsey-level operations, and Horizon couldn't afford that kind of firepower. She made a note to dig deeper into the consulting arrangement. Something about this whole situation felt too convenient, too perfect. In her experience, when a failing company suddenly found religion, there was usually a trick behind the miracle. Her phone buzzed with the text from Mackenzie. "Got the consulting gig starting Monday. Wish me luck." Madison smiled, despite herself. Maybe Mackenzie's luck was finally changing. She typed back, "That's wonderful. I'm proud of you." It wasn't until later that evening, reviewing her Horizon files again, that Madison noticed the timing. Mackenzie's new consulting job was starting almost exactly 6 months after Horizon's mysterious turnaround had begun. But that was probably just coincidence. Mackenzie had never worked with companies significant enough to drive the kind of change Madison was investigating. Walking into Horizon Innovations for the first time was like entering a beautiful tomb. The office space was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, modern furniture, and enough tech equipment to power a small city. But there were too many empty desks, too many conference rooms sitting unused, and a palpable tension that made everyone speak in hushed tones. Lisa Sandoval greeted me at reception. In her early 40s, she had the kind of focused intensity that came from years of managing impossible deadlines at major tech companies, but there were stress lines around her eyes that said she'd been fighting this battle for too long. "Mackenzie, welcome to Horizon. Harold's told me great things about you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to dig in." Lisa's smile was genuine but tired. "I hope you're ready for a challenge. We've got amazing technology, brilliant people, and about 5 months of runway left." She walked me through the office, introducing me to the remaining team members, 30 people, down from 55 6 months ago. The layoffs had been brutal but necessary, and the survivors carried themselves with the mixed determination and desperation of people who knew they were running out of chances. David Chen, the CTO, showed me their flagship product, a data processing system that could analyze terabytes of information in real time and surface insights that would take traditional systems days to compute. "It's beautiful," I said, meaning it. "But tell me honestly, who's your ideal customer?" David and Lisa exchanged glances. "Fortune 500 companies with massive data infrastructure needs," Lisa said. "Banking, telecommunications, healthcare systems." How long does it take to close a deal with companies like that? 18 to 24 months. David admitted. They have extensive evaluation processes, regulatory requirements, integration challenges. I felt my first panic attack in weeks building in my chest. This was exactly the problem Harold had described, but seeing it firsthand made the challenge feel overwhelming. These brilliant people had built something incredible, but they were trying to sell moon rockets to people who needed bicycles. That first month was hell. I spent 12-hour days analyzing market research, customer feedback, and competitive intelligence. I interviewed dozens of potential clients, from enterprise giants to mid-market companies. The pattern became clear. Large enterprises were interested, but moved too slowly, while smaller companies loved the speed, but thought the system was overkill for their needs. Meanwhile, the company was bleeding money. Harold had been honest about the timeline, but the reality was worse than his projections. At our current burn rate, we had 4 months, not 5. "We need to make a decision," Harold said during one of our weekly strategy meetings. It was just him, Lisa, and me in the conference room, with financial projections spread across the table like evidence of a crime. "Stay the course and hope we close some enterprise deals, or pivot completely." "A complete pivot could take months we don't have," Lisa said, "and there's no guarantee it would work." I've been thinking about this for weeks, running scenarios and building models in my head. What if we didn't pivot the technology, but completely changed how we package and sell it? Both of them looked at me skeptically. Right now, you're selling a complete system for millions of dollars. But what if we created tiered offerings? A basic version for small companies, a standard version for mid-market, and an enterprise solution for the Fortune 500. That would require rebuilding our entire sales and marketing infrastructure, Lisa said. Yes, but it would also give us multiple revenue streams and faster time to revenue. A small company could implement our basic system in 4 weeks instead of 4 months. Harold leaned back in his chair, considering. It's risky. We'd essentially be admitting that our current strategy has failed. Our current strategy has failed, I said bluntly. The question is whether we want to fail fast or fail slowly. Fail. And the decision took the 3 weeks and nearly killed me. I presented my analysis to the board of directors, 8 venture capitalists and tech executives who'd invested millions in Horizon and were watching it disappear. They grilled me for 2 hours, poking holes in my projections and questioning whether a fundamental restructuring was worth the risk. In the end, they gave us 8 weeks to prove the concept, 8 weeks to rebuild our product offering, retrain our sales team, and start closing deals with a completely different customer base. I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including me. 18-hour days became normal. I slept in the office more nights than I went home. My anxiety medication became as essential as coffee, and I started seeing Dr. Hao Chen twice a week just to stay functional. But something amazing happened during those impossible weeks. I discovered I was good at this. Not just good at coding or analyzing data, but good at seeing the big picture, at understanding how all the pieces fit together, at making decisions under pressure. Lisa became my closest ally, working alongside me to redesign our product offerings and rebuild our marketing materials. David and his team created the new product tiers in record time. Even the sales team, initially skeptical about abandoning enterprise clients they'd spent years cultivating, started to see the potential. 6 weeks into our 8-week trial, we closed our first deal with a mid-market logistics company. $50,000 for a system that would have cost them $500,000 under our old model, but that they could implement immediately and scale as they grew. 3 days later, we closed 2 more deals. By the end of week 8, we had 7 new clients and a pipeline of prospects that looked sustainable for the first time in Horizon's history. The board meeting where we presented our results was surreal. The same executives who'd been skeptical 2 months earlier were suddenly talking about expansion, additional funding, and long-term growth strategies. This is remarkable work, and the board chairman said. looking directly at me. "You've essentially saved this company." Harold, sitting beside me, smiled with what looked like paternal pride. "Mackenzie has shown exceptional strategic thinking and leadership under pressure. I'd like to recommend that the board consider making her role permanent." "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Sarah Martinez, one of the VC's chief strategy officer. Harold said, "With equity and a seat at the executive table." The discussion that followed was intense but brief. They offered me the position on the spot, with a salary that was triple what I'd been making as a freelancer and equity that could be life-changing if Horizon continued to grow. I accepted, feeling like I was stepping into someone else's life. Meanwhile, Madison was discovering that being a VP came with pressures she hadn't anticipated. The North Star acquisition team was under intense scrutiny from the board, and every potential deal was analyzed, questioned, and second-guessed by executives who'd never closed a tech acquisition in their lives. Her investigation of Horizon Innovations had yielded mixed results. The company's turnaround appeared to be legitimate, real revenue, real customers, real growth. But something about the timeline still bothered her. She'd managed to identify the external consultant who'd worked with Horizon during their transformation period, but the consulting agreement was sealed under a non-disclosure agreement that would take legal action to breach. "What's your recommendation?" Lawrence asked during their monthly review meeting. Madison looked at her carefully prepared analysis. "The turnaround appears sustainable. Their new market positioning is smart. Their customer acquisition costs are reasonable, and their technology is genuinely impressive. But the transformation was remarkably fast. Companies don't usually pivot this successfully this quickly, without exceptional leadership or exceptional luck." Lawrence nodded. "And you think it's leadership?" "I think someone with significant strategic experience was involved in their restructuring. Probably someone with a track record of successful turnarounds." "Can you identify this person?" Madison hesitated. "Not yet, but I'm working on it." What she didn't tell Lawrence was that she'd been thinking about Mackenzie's consulting timeline more and more. Her sister had mentioned working with a former CTO, and the dates aligned perfectly with Horizon's transformation. But Mackenzie had never demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking required for this level of corporate restructuring. Had Madison realized she might not know her sister as well as she thought? 3 months into my role as Chief Strategy Officer, Horizon had become unrecognizable. The empty desks were filled with new hires. The hushed conversations had been replaced by the energetic buzz of a company that believed in its future. Our revenue was up 40% and still climbing. But with success came a new kind of pressure. I was no longer just the consultant who'd helped turn things around. I was a key executive responsible for sustaining growth, managing a team, and making decisions that affected dozens of jobs and millions of dollars. The imposter syndrome hit me in waves. During board meetings, I'd catch myself wondering when someone would realize I was just a freelance developer who'd gotten lucky. When industry publications started mentioning Horizon as a company to watch, I felt like I was wearing someone else's success story. "You're doing it again," Lisa said, finding me in my office late one evening, staring at our latest revenue projections. "Doing what?" "Questioning whether you deserve to be here. I can see it in your face." I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Maybe because I'm not sure I do deserve it. 6 months ago, I was unemployed and living off savings." Lisa sat down across from my desk. 6 months ago, this company was dying. You saved it. Not luck, not circumstances. Your analysis, your strategy, your leadership during the implementation. Harold did most of the heavy lifting. Harold opened doors and provided credibility. You did the work. Lisa leaned forward. Mackenzie. I've worked with strategic consultants from McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting. Most of them are brilliant at analysis but terrible at execution. You're brilliant at both. Her words helped, but the doubt never fully went away. Success felt fragile, temporary, like something that could be taken away as quickly as it had arrived. Harold's retirement announcement came as a shock. even though I should have seen it coming. He was 72 years old and had been talking about wanting to spend more time with his grandchildren, but his presence had been my security blanket, the proof that I belonged in rooms full of executives and investors. "You don't need me anymore," he said when I expressed my concerns. "You haven't needed me for months. The board listens to you. They respect your experience. They respect your results. That's more valuable than experience." Harold smiled. "Besides, I'm not disappearing. I'll still be an advisor, just not day-to-day operational." The conversation we had next changed everything. "Mackenzie, the board has been discussing succession planning. With me stepping back and Lisa focused on product development, we need someone to step up as CEO." My heart stopped. "You mean hiring someone?" "I mean promoting someone. Someone who already knows the company, understands our strategy, and has proven they can lead during crisis." The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. CEO, Chief Executive Officer, the title I'd never imagined applied to me, now being offered by people who'd seen what I could do under pressure. "I need time to think about it." "Of course." "But Mackenzie," Harold's expression grew serious, "don't let fear make this decision for you. You've earned this opportunity." I drove home that night in a daze, my phone buzzing with congratulatory texts as news of my potential promotion leaked through Silicon Valley's notorious gossip network. But I didn't tell anyone in my family, not yet. The decision to keep quiet wasn't about creating drama or planning some grand reveal. I simply needed time to settle into the role, to prove to myself that I could handle the responsibility before facing the inevitable skepticism from Madison and my parents. Madison's investigation of Horizon was reaching a critical juncture. Her analysis had convinced the North Star board that the company was a legitimate acquisition target. But something continued to nag at her about the timeline and the mysterious consultant. She'd managed to piece together more details about Horizon's transformation. The turnaround had begun with the arrival of Harold Warner as interim strategic advisor. But the real changes had come from his external consultant, someone with no apparent track record in corporate restructuring, but who'd somehow engineered one of the most successful pivots Madison had ever studied. "I want to move forward with acquisition discussions," Lawrence announced during their team meeting. "Horizon is exactly the kind of innovative, well-managed tech company we need in our portfolio." Madison nodded, but privately she had reservations. Not about Horizon's success, but about North Star's approach. The acquisition team was viewing Horizon as a traditional buyout target. Purchase the company, integrate the technology, absorb the talent, and eliminate redundancies. It was an approach that had worked for financial services companies and traditional businesses. But tech companies were different. They succeeded because of culture, innovation, and entrepreneurial leadership. Heavy-handed integration could destroy the very qualities that made them valuable. "What's the timeline?" Madison asked. "I want to schedule informal meetings within the next month. There's an industry networking event next week that several Horizon executives are attending. It would be perfect for initial contact." Madison felt a familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. Networking events were where deals were made and careers were built, but they were also where reputations could be destroyed by a single misstep. "Who's attending from Horizon?" Lawrence checked his notes. "CEO Lisa Sandoval, CTO David Chen, and their new Chief Strategy Officer. Do we know anything about the CSO?" "Not much. Relatively new hire, brought in during their turnaround. Supposed to be very sharp, but maintains a low profile." That evening, Madison called Mackenzie to check in. It had become a habit over the past few months, brief conversations that felt more genuine than their previous interactions. "How's the consulting work going?" Madison asked. "Really well. Actually, better than I expected." Mackenzie's voice sounded different, more confident, more energetic. "I can't go into details because of NDAs, but I'm working on some exciting projects." "That's wonderful. I'm proud of you." "Thanks. How's the VP role treating you? Madison paused, considering how much to share. It's challenging. Lots of pressure, lots of responsibility. Sometimes I wonder if I'm in over my head. I doubt that. You've always been the one with everything figured out. That's what everyone thinks, Madison said softly. But it's not always true. After they hung up, Madison stared at her phone, thinking about the changes she'd noticed in her sister over the past few months. Mackenzie seemed happier, more settled, more confident in herself. Whatever consulting work she was doing was clearly good for her. Madison just hoped it would last longer than Mackenzie's previous career attempts. The pressure at North Star was mounting in ways Madison hadn't anticipated. Her parents' medical bills continued to drain her savings, even with her VP salary. Dad's latest cardiac procedure had cost $40,000 after insurance, and Mom's ongoing treatments weren't getting any cheaper. She'd been covering these expenses for 2 years without telling anyone, maintaining the fiction that their parents' insurance and retirement savings were adequate. But the financial strain was becoming unsustainable, especially with the lifestyle expectations that came with her corporate position. The Horizon acquisition could be career-defining for Madison. A successful tech acquisition would establish her as a key player in North Star's diversification strategy and position her for even greater opportunities. The bonus alone would solve her family's financial problems permanently. But something about the whole situation felt increasingly complicated. The more she learned about Horizon's success story, the more impressed she became with their strategic transformation. This wasn't just a company ripe for acquisition. It was a company that had figured out how to succeed on its own terms. The networking event was scheduled for the following Thursday at the Grand Hotel downtown. Madison had attended dozens of similar events, but this one felt different, more consequential. She had no way of knowing that her sister would be there too, or that the evening would change both of their lives forever. The networking event invitation arrived on elegant cardstock with the North Star Financial logo embossed in gold. Strategic Partnership Forum building bridges between traditional finance and emerging technology. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the weight of what it represented. "You have to go," Lisa said when I showed her the invitation. "Half the industry will be there, and this is exactly the kind of event where real partnerships get started." I'd been CEO of Horizon for exactly 2 weeks, and the title still felt foreign when I said it out loud. The board had made it official in a private ceremony that felt more like a legal proceeding than a celebration, but the golden Horizon pin on my lapel was real enough. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this level of visibility," I admitted. Lisa gave me the kind of look she reserved for particularly stubborn coding problems. "Mackenzie, you just turned around a failing company and positioned it for sustainable growth. You're ready for whatever room you walk into. But what if nothing? You earned your place at that table." She handed me back the invitation. "Besides, Harold will be there, and this could be exactly the opportunity we need to establish Horizon as a serious player in the industry." That evening, I called Harold for advice. His voice was warm but firm when he answered. "Networking events are just conversations with better catering," he said. "Be yourself, talk about our work, and remember that most of the people there are just as nervous as you are. Even the VPs and senior executives, especially them, they have more to lose." I spent the weekend preparing for the event like it was a board presentation. I reviewed industry reports, practiced elevator pitches, and tried on 3 different outfits before settling on a charcoal suit with subtle pinstripes. Professional but not flashy. Authoritative without trying too hard. Standing in front of my bathroom mirror Monday morning, I barely recognized myself. The anxious freelancer was gone, replaced by someone who looked capable of running a company. The transformation wasn't just in my clothes or posture. It was deeper than that. I carried myself differently now, spoke with more confidence, made decisions without second-guessing every detail. But the imposter syndrome lingered. In quiet moments, I still felt like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Madison's preparation for the networking event was equally intense, but for different reasons. The Horizon acquisition had become her primary focus, and this event represented her best opportunity to make informal contact with their leadership team. She'd finally managed to gather more intelligence about Horizon's mysterious chief strategy officer. According to LinkedIn, Mackenzie Wilson had been promoted to CEO just 2 weeks ago, an unusually rapid rise that reinforced Madison's suspicion that there was more to this story than met the eye. The name had triggered something familiar, but Madison couldn't place it. Wilson was a common enough surname, and Mackenzie wasn't an unusual first name. Still, something about the combination nagged at her. "I want you to focus on building rapport with their executive team," Lawrence instructed during their pre-event briefing. "Don't mention acquisition directly, but gauge their openness to strategic partnerships." "And what do we know about their CEO?" Lawrence checked his notes. "Mackenzie Wilson, recently promoted from Chief Strategy Officer, relatively young, but supposedly very sharp. The turnaround strategy that saved the company was largely her work." Madison nodded, making mental notes. A young CEO with a proven track record might be amenable to the right kind of partnership arrangement, especially if North Star positioned itself as a growth enabler rather than a predatory acquirer. The financial pressure weighing on Madison had reached a critical point. Her father's latest medical bills had maxed out her credit cards, and her mother's treatments were becoming more expensive as her condition worsened. The Horizon acquisition bonus could solve these problems permanently, but only if Madison could deliver results. She'd been carrying this financial burden alone for 2 years, maintaining the perfect facade of professional success while quietly liquidating her retirement savings to cover her parents' medical expenses. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was investigating a company's financial stability while her own was crumbling. The night before the event, Madison called Mackenzie to check in. It had become their routine, these brief conversations that felt more genuine than years of family dinners. "How are things with the consulting work?" Madison asked. "Actually, there's been a development," Mackenzie said, her voice carrying an excitement Madison hadn't heard in years. "I can't go into details, but I might be taking on a more permanent role with my current client." "That's wonderful. Are you excited about it?" "Terrified and excited in equal measure," Mackenzie admitted. "It's a bigger opportunity than I ever imagined, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for it." Madison felt a pang of recognition. Imposter syndrome. "Exactly. I keep waiting for someone to realize they've made a mistake." "Mackenzie, you're more capable than you give yourself credit for. You always have been." There was a pause. "That means a lot coming from you." After they hung up, Madison stared at her phone, thinking about the changes in her sister's voice. Mackenzie sounded confident, settled, like she'd finally found something that fit. Madison just hoped this opportunity was real and not another false start that would leave her sister even more disappointed. Thursday arrived with unseasonable rain that turned San Francisco's streets into mirrors reflecting the city's lights. Madison arrived at the Grand Hotel 30 minutes early, using the time to review her notes and mentally prepare for the evening ahead. The ballroom had been transformed into an elegant networking space with clusters of high-top tables, a central bar, and discrete areas for private conversations. Early arrivals moved through the space with the practiced ease of people who attended these events regularly. Madison spotted several familiar faces from previous industry gatherings, VPs from competing firms, tech executives, venture capitalists who funded the companies everyone was trying to acquire. The evening's guest list read like a who's who of Silicon Valley's power brokers. She accepted a glass of wine from a passing server and positioned herself where she could observe the room without appearing to lurk. The art of networking was largely about reading the room, identifying key players, and timing approaches for maximum effectiveness. Across the ballroom, Mackenzie Wilson was doing exactly the same thing. Madison noticed her first as a striking woman in an elegant charcoal suit, standing alone near the windows overlooking the city. Something about her posture, confident but slightly reserved, caught Madison's attention. When the woman turned to scan the room, Madison got her first clear look at her face. The recognition hit like physical shock. Mackenzie. Her sister, Mackenzie. Looking more professional and self-assured than Madison had ever seen her. Wearing a suit that probably cost more than Mackenzie's usual monthly budget, with a small golden pin on her lapel that Madison couldn't make out from across the room. What was Mackenzie doing at an exclusive industry networking event? How had she even gotten an invitation? Madison watched, fascinated and confused, as her sister moved through the room with surprising ease. Mackenzie was engaging in conversations with other attendees, laughing at appropriate moments, exchanging business cards with the casual confidence of someone who belonged in this world. This wasn't the uncertain, job-hopping Mackenzie that Madison knew. This was someone else entirely. Madison was so focused on watching her sister that she almost missed the approach of Lawrence Fletcher and 2 other North Star executives. "Madison, there you are," Lawrence said. "I'd like you to meet Robert Chen from the Tech Division and Sarah Martinez from Strategic Planning. They'll be part of the Horizon Evaluation Team." As introductions were made and small talk exchanged, Madison found herself divided between the professional conversation happening around her and the mystery of her sister's presence across the room. She was about to excuse herself to approach Mackenzie when Lawrence's voice cut through her distraction. "There she is," he said, nodding toward the windows. "Mackenzie Wilson, Horizon's CEO. Perfect timing. Let's go make introductions." Madison's world tilted on its axis. CEO, Mackenzie Wilson, CEO of Horizon Innovations. Her sister wasn't just attending the networking event. She was one of the primary targets. As Lawrence began walking toward Mackenzie, Madison felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Every assumption she'd made about her sister, about Horizon, about the mysterious consultant who'd engineered their turnaround, collapsed in an instant. Mackenzie wasn't just working with Horizon. She was Horizon. And Madison was there to acquire her. The recognition was mutual and instantaneous. I saw Madison approaching with a group of North Star executives, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. My sister, impeccably dressed in a navy blue dress that screamed expensive confidence, was walking directly toward me with the kind of predatory focus I'd seen in documentaries about sharks. Behind her walked a distinguished man in his 50s who could only be Lawrence Fletcher, based on the photos I'd studied in preparation for this meeting. Madison's boss. The senior VP who'd been orchestrating North Star's aggressive expansion into tech acquisitions. My sister was part of the team trying to buy my company. "Mackenzie Wilson." Lawrence extended his hand with the practiced warmth of a man who'd closed hundreds of deals. "Lawrence Fletcher, Senior VP at North Star Financial. I've been looking forward to meeting you." "Mr. Fletcher, a pleasure." I shook his hand while maintaining eye contact. Every lesson Harold had taught me about executive presence coming into focus. I've heard impressive things about North Star's strategic vision. "Allow me to introduce my team. This is Sarah Martinez from Strategic Planning, Robert Chen from our Tech Division, and Madison Wilson, our VP of Strategic Acquisitions." Madison stepped forward, her professional smile perfectly calibrated to anyone watching. We looked like 2 executives meeting for the first time. Only I could see the slight tremor in her hands, the carefully controlled shock in her eyes. "Ms. Wilson," Madison said, her voice steady despite what must have been complete internal chaos. "I've been following Horizon's remarkable turnaround with great interest. Please, call me Mackenzie." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Your reputation in strategic acquisitions precedes you." "Madison," Lawrence beamed, oblivious to the undercurrents. "Madison has been leading our analysis of innovative tech companies. She's particularly impressed with your strategic repositioning over the past year." I felt a chill run down my spine. Madison had been analyzing my company. She knew our financials, our strategies, our vulnerabilities. She'd been studying us like specimens under a microscope, preparing for acquisition. "That's fascinating," I said, maintaining my composure. What aspects of our approach caught your attention? Madison's eyes flickered with something that might have been respect or warning. The speed of your market pivot was remarkable. Companies rarely execute that kind of fundamental restructuring so successfully. We had exceptional circumstances and exceptional leadership, Lawrence interjected. I understand you were instrumental in the turnaround strategy. It was a team effort, I replied, deflecting credit in the way Harold had taught me. We had brilliant people who just needed the right framework to succeed. Sarah Martinez leaned forward. The revenue growth you've achieved is impressive, but what's your long-term sustainability strategy? Tech markets can be volatile. It was a loaded question, the kind designed to probe for weaknesses. I felt my anxiety spike but pushed it down, drawing on months of board presentations and investor meetings. Diversification is key, I said. We've built scalable products that serve multiple market segments, so we're not dependent on any single industry or customer base. Our technology platform is designed to evolve with market needs. Robert Chen nodded appreciatively. Smart approach. Too many startups chase the enterprise market without building sustainable foundations. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, a carefully choreographed dance where both sides probed for information, while revealing as little as possible. Madison said almost nothing after the initial exchange, but I could feel her watching me, analyzing every word, every gesture. Finally, Lawrence glanced at his watch. We should let you get back to networking. Mackenzie, perhaps we could schedule a more formal meeting next week to discuss potential partnership opportunities. I'd welcome that conversation, I said, knowing I couldn't avoid it indefinitely. As the North Star team moved away, Madison lingered for a moment. That was, she started, then stopped. Professional, I finished. Which is how we should keep it. Madison nodded, but her expression was complex. Mackenzie, I had no idea. We can discuss family matters later, tonight. I'm here as Horizon's CEO. Something flickered across Madison's face. Hurt, maybe, or recognition that our childhood dynamic had shifted in ways she wasn't prepared for. After they left, I excused myself to the restroom, where I spent 5 minutes practicing breathing exercises and reminding myself that I'd earned my place in that room. The anxiety was manageable now, but the shock of discovery had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. When I returned to the networking area, I threw myself into conversations with other attendees, building relationships that could benefit Horizon regardless of what happened with North Star. But I was hyper-aware of Madison's presence across the room, the way she moved through conversations with practiced ease while occasionally glancing in my direction. The evening was nearing its end when I found myself in conversation with James Morrison, a VP from TechCorp Industries. We were discussing data security challenges when I noticed Madison approaching again, but this time she was alone, and her professional composure seemed slightly frayed. "Excuse me," Madison said, interrupting our conversation. "Mackenzie, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" James Morrison took the hint gracefully. Excusing himself to refresh his drink, Madison and I moved to a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the main networking flow. "I need to know something," Madison said without preamble. "How long have you been CEO?" 2 weeks officially, but I've been with Horizon for 8 months. 8 months. Madison's voice was carefully controlled. "So you were there for the entire turnaround?" "I led the turnaround." Madison stared at me, and I could see her recalculating everything she thought she knew. "You, the mysterious consultant who saved Horizon, it was you." "Harold Warner brought me in as a strategic advisor. The board promoted me when the results spoke for themselves. This is—" Madison struggled for words. "Mackenzie, do you understand what this means? North Star has been preparing to acquire Horizon for weeks. I've been leading the analysis." "I know. You know." Her voice rose slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. "How long have you known Since Lawrence introduced you as the VP of Strategic Acquisitions, it wasn't hard to figure out. Madison looked stricken. The things I said in my reports, the weaknesses I identified, were probably accurate. You're good at your job. Madison, but you're my sister. Tonight, I'm the CEO of a company your firm wants to acquire. Family doesn't factor into business decisions. Madison's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on something like resignation. What happens now? Now we both do our jobs. You'll recommend whether North Star should pursue acquisition. I'll decide whether Horizon is interested in being acquired. And if our professional interests conflict. I met her eyes directly. Then we'll handle it professionally. Madison nodded slowly, but I could see the turmoil beneath her composed exterior. Mackenzie, I want you to know, don't. I cut her off gently. Don't apologize for doing your job well. Don't feel guilty for not knowing something I chose not to share. We're both exactly where we're supposed to be. Before Madison could respond, Lawrence Fletcher appeared at her elbow. Madison, there you are. The Morrison Group wants to continue our earlier conversation. He turned to me with a warm smile. Mackenzie, wonderful to meet you this evening. I'll have my assistant reach out about scheduling our follow-up meeting. I look forward to it, I replied. As they walked away, I heard Lawrence say, Madison did an excellent job with the Horizon analysis. She really impressed me with her insights into their strategic positioning. Madison glanced back at me once before disappearing into the crowd, and in that look I saw the beginning of a reckoning that would change everything between us. The evening was winding down, but the real drama was just beginning. I had 2 weeks to prepare for the most important business negotiation of my career, with my sister sitting across the table as my primary adversary. Harold had been right about one thing. Networking events were just conversations with better catering. He'd failed to mention that sometimes those conversations could blow up your entire family dynamic. The weekend after the networking event passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. I spent Saturday morning researching North Star's acquisition history, their integration methods, and their track record with tech companies. The results weren't encouraging. North Star had acquired 6 technology firms in the past 3 years. 3 had been absorbed completely. Their technology integrated into North Star's existing platforms and their founding teams scattered to other companies. 2 had been stripped for intellectual property and shut down. Only 1 maintained any independent operation, and even that was heavily controlled by North Star management. Madison called on Sunday evening. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Not as CEO and VP, but as sisters. I'd been expecting this conversation, dreading it, and wanting it in equal measure. Come over. We need privacy for this. Madison arrived at my apartment 30 minutes later, looking more uncertain than I'd seen her since we were children. She'd traded her executive wardrobe for jeans and a sweater, but the tension in her shoulders remained. I feel like I don't know you at all, she said, accepting the coffee I offered. CEO of a tech company, Mackenzie, 8 months ago you were unemployed. A lot can change in 8 months. Not this much, not this fast. Madison set down her cup without drinking. People don't just become CEOs overnight. There has to be more to this story. I told her, not everything. Some details were still confidential, but enough to explain how the Herald connection had led to Horizon, how the consulting work had evolved into a permanent position, how the board had recognized my contributions with increasing responsibility. Madison listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from skepticism to surprise to something that might have been respect. The turnaround strategy that impressed everyone at North Star, she said when I finished. The strategic repositioning that saved the company, that was your work. Mostly. Yes. Mackenzie, that's incredible. The analysis I did, the financial projections, I was studying your success without knowing it. And now, Madison was quiet for a long moment. Now I have to decide whether to recommend that North Star acquire the company my sister built. What does your analysis say? That Horizon would be an excellent acquisition, solid technology, proven management, sustainable growth model. Madison met my eyes. But I'm starting to think acquisition might not be the right approach. What do you mean? North Star's track record with tech acquisitions isn't great. We're good at buying companies, but we're not good at preserving what makes them successful. We tend to impose our corporate culture, our processes, our management style. I felt a chill of recognition. That would destroy everything we've built. I know. Which is why I'm starting to think partnership might be a better approach than acquisition. Would your management see it that way? Madison's smile was rueful. That's where it gets complicated. Lawrence is under pressure to deliver acquisitions, not partnerships. The board wants to own innovative companies, not just work with them. We talked until midnight, exploring options and scenarios that might work for both companies. Madison's insights into North Star's corporate culture were sobering, but her willingness to consider alternatives gave me hope. Monday morning brought a call from Lawrence Fletcher's assistant, scheduling our formal meeting for Wednesday afternoon. Madison would be there, along with Robert Chen and Sarah Martinez. The stakes couldn't be higher. I spent Tuesday preparing with Lisa and our board advisor Harold, wargaming different scenarios and preparing responses to likely questions. Harold was particularly focused on helping me understand the power dynamics at play. They'll try to position this as an opportunity for Horizon, he warned. Access to capital, marketing resources, distribution channels. They'll make it sound like a gift. But it's not. It's a transaction. They want our technology, our team, and our growth potential. The question is whether we can maintain our independence and culture in exchange for their resources. Wednesday arrived with unseasonable sunshine that felt like a good omen. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one I'd worn to my first board presentation, and added the Golden Horizon pin that had become my talisman. The North Star offices occupied 4 floors of a gleaming downtown tower. Everything about the space screamed establishment wealth: marble floors, oil paintings, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. I was escorted to a conference room on the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Lawrence Fletcher arrived first, followed by Robert Chen and Sarah Martinez. Madison entered last, looking every inch the professional executive in a sharply tailored black suit. "Mackenzie, thank you for taking the time to meet with us," Lawrence began. "We've been very impressed with Horizon's performance and see significant potential for partnership." The next hour was a masterclass in corporate diplomacy. Both sides probed for information while revealing as little as possible about their true intentions. Lawrence outlined North Star's vision for tech integration, emphasizing their resources and market reach. I described Horizon's growth strategy and commitment to innovation. Madison said almost nothing during the formal presentation, but I could see her taking notes, analyzing everything I said against her previous research. "The partnership model we're envisioning," Lawrence said, "would provide Horizon with access to North Star's client base, marketing infrastructure, and capital resources. In exchange, we'd want to integrate your technology platform across our operations." "That sounds like a substantial commitment," I replied carefully. "What kind of integration timeline are you considering?" 18 to 24 months for full implementation. We'd want to start with pilot programs, but the goal would be complete platform integration. Red flags were flying in my head. Complete platform integration meant complete control over our technology, our development roadmap, our strategic direction. And Horizon's operational independence during this process. Lawrence and Robert exchanged glances. We'd want to ensure consistent implementation across all platforms. That would require some coordination with our existing tech teams. Translation: they wanted control. I spent the next 30 minutes asking detailed questions about their integration process, their management philosophy, and their track record with similar partnerships. Their answers were diplomatic but revealing. This wasn't a partnership they were proposing. It was a gradual acquisition disguised as collaboration. "I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this," I said finally. "I'll need to review the proposal with my board and get back to you with our thoughts." "Of course," Lawrence said. "Take all the time you need. We're excited about the possibilities." As the meeting broke up, Madison approached me privately. "Can we talk outside?" We took the elevator down to the building's lobby in silence, then walked to a small park across the street. Madison chose a bench away from foot traffic before speaking. "They're not going to let you maintain independence," she said without preamble. I gathered that. "Lawrence is under pressure to show results. The board wants acquisitions, not partnerships. What they presented today is just the opening position." "And the real position?" Madison was quiet for a moment. "Complete acquisition within 6 months. They'll start with partnership language, but the goal is full control over technology, operations, and strategic direction." I felt sick. What would that mean for our team? Probably 50% layoffs within a year. Integration of remaining staff into North Star's corporate structure. Your management team would be transitioned out, including me. Madison's expression was pained. "Especially you. They see you as a flight risk. Someone who might take key employees to a competitor. They'd want to lock you into a consulting agreement for 18 months, then let you go." The betrayal wasn't that Madison was delivering bad news. It was that this was always what North Star had intended. The partnership language was just packaging around a hostile takeover. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're my sister. Because what you've built at Horizon is remarkable, and they'll destroy it. Because—" Madison struggled for words. "Because I've spent 2 years helping North Star acquire companies, and I've seen what happens. You don't want this. Mackenzie?" "What about your career? If I reject their offer?" "My career will survive, but your company might not. If you say yes." We sat in silence for several minutes, watching office workers hurry past on their lunch breaks. Finally, Madison spoke again. "There might be another option." "I'm listening." "What if instead of North Star acquiring Horizon, we proposed a genuine partnership, joint development projects, shared technology licensing, collaborative client services? You maintain independence. We get access to innovation." "Would Lawrence go for that?" "Not initially. But if I can demonstrate that it's more profitable than acquisition, he might listen." I studied my sister's face, looking for hidden motives or agendas. What I saw was someone wrestling with the same conflicts I was: professional obligation versus personal values, career advancement versus doing the right thing. "Why would you do this? Help me. I mean—" Madison's smile was sad but genuine. "Maybe because it's time I started rooting for your success instead of just protecting my own." That evening, I called an emergency board meeting to discuss North Star's proposal and explore alternatives. The discussion was intense and divided. Some board members saw North Star as exactly the kind of established partner we needed for expansion, while others shared my concerns about maintaining our independence. Harold, participating by video conference from his retirement in Napa, was characteristically direct. "The question isn't whether North Star can help Horizon grow," he said. "The question is whether Horizon can survive North Star's help." In the end, the board agreed to explore alternative partnership structures before responding to North Star's proposal. It was a risky strategy that could alienate a potential partner, but it preserved our options while we figured out what we really wanted. Madison and I spent the next week working on a counter-proposal that might serve both companies' interests without destroying what made Horizon successful. It was strange, collaborating with my sister after years of competition, but also surprisingly natural. We were both good at what we did, and when we focused on solving problems instead of outcompeting each other, we made a formidable team. The counter-proposal we developed was elegant in its simplicity, a technology licensing agreement that gave Northstar access to Horizon's innovations while preserving our independence and allowing both companies to benefit from collaborative development. Whether Lawrence Fletcher and the Northstar board would see it that way remained an open question. 6 months after the networking event that changed everything, I found myself in a place I never could have imagined. Horizon Innovations had grown to 120 employees. Our technology was being used by companies across 3 industries. And most surprisingly, our partnership with Northstar Financial had become a model for how traditional institutions could collaborate with tech startups without destroying what made them innovative. The partnership wasn't perfect. No business relationship ever is. But it worked because both sides had learned to value what the other brought to the table. Northstar gained access to cutting-edge technology and innovative thinking. Horizon gained market reach and financial stability without sacrificing our independence or culture. Madison had been instrumental in making it work. Her counterproposal had initially met with skepticism from Lawrence Fletcher and the Northstar board, but the financial projections were compelling enough to warrant a pilot program. When the pilot exceeded expectations, the partnership model became official. "You realize you probably cost yourself a promotion," I told Madison during one of our monthly check-ins. We'd started meeting regularly to coordinate our company's collaboration, but the conversations had evolved into something more personal. "Maybe," Madison said, sipping her coffee, "but I learned something important in the process." "What's that?" "Success doesn't always mean winning. Sometimes it means helping other people succeed too." It was a profound change from the sister who'd spent our childhood collecting achievements like trophies. Madison was still driven, still competitive, but she'd found ways to channel those instincts toward collaboration rather than domination. The change hadn't been easy for either of us. Our family dinners had gone through an awkward adjustment period as our parents struggled to recalibrate their understanding of both daughters. For 30 years, Madison had been the successful one, and I'd been the work in progress. Suddenly, we were both successful in different ways, and the old dynamic didn't fit anymore. "It's wonderful that you're both doing so well," our mother had said during a recent Sunday dinner. "But I'm not sure I understand what either of you actually does anymore." Madison and I had exchanged glances across the table, and for the first time in our adult lives, we'd laughed together without an undercurrent of competition. The financial pressure that had driven Madison's initial interest in the Horizon acquisition had been resolved through a combination of her salary increase and a more honest conversation with our parents about their medical expenses. It turned out they'd been just as secretive about their financial struggles as Madison had been about covering them. "We didn't want to burden you girls," our father had admitted when the truth finally came out. "You both have your own lives to build." "Dad," I'd said gently, "we're family. Family helps each other, even when it's complicated." We'd worked out a sustainable plan where both Madison and I contributed to our parents' medical expenses, but within our means and with full transparency. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was honest, and honesty had been missing from our family dynamics for too long. Harold's wisdom had proven correct once again. The most important relationship I'd ever have was with myself, learning to value my own contributions, to trust my instincts, and to define success on my own terms had made everything else possible. But building healthy relationships with others, with Madison, with our parents, with my team at Horizon, had required a different kind of work. It meant learning to communicate without defensiveness, to compete without destruction, to succeed without diminishing others. Madison's transformation had been equally remarkable. The perfectionist eldest daughter had learned to embrace uncertainty, to take risks, to value innovation over control. Her work at Northstar had evolved beyond acquisitions to focus on strategic partnerships and collaborative development. "I think I was so afraid of failing that I forgot what I was trying to succeed at," she told me during one of our conversations. Getting ahead became more important than doing meaningful work. The partnership between our companies had become a case study taught at business schools. But the real success story was more personal. Two sisters who'd spent their lives in competition had learned to collaborate. Two companies with different cultures and priorities had found common ground. It wasn't a fairy tale ending where all conflicts were resolved and everyone lived happily ever after. Madison and I still had different personalities, different approaches to problem solving, different definitions of success. Our companies still had competing interests that required careful navigation. But we'd built something sustainable: professional respect, personal understanding, and a family relationship based on who we were as adults rather than who we'd been as children. The networking event where it all began had been about building bridges between traditional finance and emerging technology. In the end, the most important bridge we'd built was between two sisters who'd spent too many years on opposite sides of an imaginary river. Looking back, I realized that success had never been about winning or losing, about being better than Madison or proving myself to our parents. Success was about building something meaningful, helping others grow, and finding ways to use our individual strengths in service of something larger than ourselves. Harold had been right about leadership, too. It wasn't about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions and being willing to learn from everyone around you. The most valuable lessons I'd learned as CEO hadn't come from business schools or management books, but from honest conversations with people who saw things differently than I did. As I sat in my office that evening, looking out at the San Francisco skyline and thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment, I felt something I'd never experienced before: genuine contentment with my own path. I was still the sister who'd taken longer to find her way, who'd changed careers multiple times, who'd struggled with anxiety and self-doubt. But I was also the CEO who'd saved a company, the leader who'd built a sustainable partnership, the person who'd learned to value her own contributions. Madison was still the high-achieving eldest daughter, but she was also the executive who'd chosen collaboration over conquest, the sister who'd learned to celebrate others' success without diminishing her own. We were both exactly who we'd always been, just better versions of ourselves. And for the first time in our lives, that felt like enough.